The BritChips Podcast is proudly sponsored by Silicon Catalyst UK.
We want to be 10 times bigger than DeepMind. I think DeepMind is obviously our inspiration and they are our heroes, but we would consider them as American, right? They're owned by Google. I do not see a scenario where DeepMind would train a model or launch a product that only benefits the UK ecosystem or, the public sector. We would like to be that. We think that we can be a phenomenal and huge company, but we can be even more ambitious than DeepMind.
Hello, I'm Anthony Miller and welcome to the BritChips Podcast, where I have conversations with movers and shakers in the UK semiconductor startup scene. Now, most of the entrepreneurs that I've met on the podcast have come from research backgrounds. They've spent years at university analysing and developing technologies, methodologies and algorithms at the very forefront of computing and electronics. But not all of them, because my guest today, he studied sociology at university, and his first job was working for an online recruitment startup that specialised in hiring blue-collar workers and delivery drivers. This was followed with stints at a number of cycle hire startups before he set his sights on the emerging cryptocurrency fintech market. And it was during that time that he met a software engineer who was developing a generative coding platform that could be applied across a wide range of industries. And they got together to launch Cosine, which now touts itself, and I quote, as the only end-to-end sovereign AI coding platform built, owned and operated entirely in Britain. So let me introduce you to Yang Li, Cosine's Chief Operating Officer and de facto front man. Yang, welcome to the BritChips Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. Really excited to chat.
And good to have you. Now, Yang, the software engineer I alluded to in my introduction is a chap called Alistair Pullin. How did you meet him, and what was it about AI code generators that lured you away from the wonderful world of crypto?
Yeah, so I had met Ali many years prior because Ali had actually worked on a different startup with my wife. So they had built a grocery delivery company at the start of COVID or just before COVID. And then it got acquired by the Americans, GoPuff, at the end of COVID. So they really timed that perfectly. And so I had known Ali for many years before we collaborated together. And so I knew his passion, I knew where we kind of complemented, and we hung out socially quite a bit, but even before we collaborated.
So where did the idea, though, of doing sort of an AI generative code platform come from?
So, Ali and I had both been playing with the various older versions of AI, whether we're GPT-2 or, the BERT type series of models. We had both played with it. Obviously, Ali had been building with it. I had just been playing it much more on a personal level. And Ali had dreamt up this prototype, and he actually invited me to meet him at our favorite wine bar in East London. He said, I've got to show you this. And he didn't tell me exactly what he was building. And, the very first version that he had built, and it was just complete by the time he got to the wine bar. He showed me the first working prototype then.
How long ago was that then?
This was in August, maybe July 2022. So,
and were you were still working in the crypto startup at the time, or had you left by then?
No, so I had left by then. So I had left by then, wanting to find another opportunity, feeling that there was something bubbling away in the LLM space. So, this was, after the GPT-3 models were released, but this was pre-ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT had not even become a product yet, but we saw the potential in terms of reading the paper, actually downloading and playing with the models themselves.
So you said that when you finally met at that wine bar, he'd got as far as the first, MVP sort of viable product.
No, it was far before that. It was duct taped together.
Right.
Very much. It was a proof of concept. It's probably even charitable then. It was barely strung together, but what it showed us was, he had built together where we could essentially daisy chain the inputs and outputs of this first generation large language model, right? So there were language models previously to be, in an infinite loop, right? So where the inputs could be outputs and the outputs could be inputs. And so with enough iterations, you could make something usable, right? It showed us that there was a spark of where this could become in the future.
And had he been doing this by himself?
Yeah, so he had spoken to a few friends about his ideas, but I was the first person to see and the actual kind of prototype that he had envisaged in his brain.
So where did you see the gap in the market then for basically an AI code generator for use in industry?
Yeah, so I think for us, as you said, right, I studied sociology at university, but my focus was on statistical analysis. So, whilst I wasn't a software engineer, I can write code in, R and Python, and I knew the kind of the idiosyncrasies and the difficulty of writing code. And obviously, Ali has been writing code since he was 8. He made his first iPhone app when he was 9. He made a couple $1,000s as a 9-year-old selling iPhone games. But so he's always seen like the difficulty of brownfield projects, right? For us,
Yeah.
it's we were both adamant to say it's interesting because we count Amjad Masad from who's the CEO of Replit, which is another big AI code-gen company that focuses on greenfield projects. We felt that was obviously exciting, but for us, the difficulty and maybe the bigger market at that time for us, and so I think now it's been validated. The bigger kind of market is the brownfield projects, the legacy code bases, the code bases that are larger. So how do we use AI to augment the workflow of very old code, very messy code, very large code bases where, it's at the limit of human ability, right? It's just a physical constraint. So you cannot store that much information inside the brain.
Okay, so let me get this right, because I hadn't heard those terms used before in that context. So greenfield sort of generative AI code is for brand new applications that you're doing from the ground up.
Yeah.
You refer to your sort of slice of the market as brownfield. So these are existing, as you say, legacy applications, which the user, the enterprise is wanting to enhance or just maintain, or what precisely would they use the Cosine platform for?
Yeah, no, I think it varies obviously based on business strategy, right? But I think that the all the way from one end of the market, for example, if you're writing, if you are a defense company where you have avionics or you have military systems that are written in, Ada code from the 80s, right, and earlier, that the talent there just does not exist, right? Universities in the world are not training students to write code in that ancient coding languages. There probably has not been a textbook released in the last 20, 30 years in that language. So it's about maintainability. So you don't want to shift away from existing systems because it's very expensive or very risky. So you want us to be the translation layer to say we'd like to maintain that. All the way on the other end is you are a financial services organization, right? So COBOL, a language invented by IBM, still I believe, and I read some statistics like something like 70% of global financial transactions are still
Still
run
run on COBOL.
on COBOL mainframes. And, there they either want to modernize or they want to build new features, right? So imagine, Monzo, Tom Blomfeld is one of our investment partners. His app, his banking service is very modern and everything they write is very modern. But when you go down to Swift, when you go down to anything that's on the transaction processing layer, you're still dealing with ancient code, right? And for there, it's like, how do you add modern features that kind of interoperate with the older systems?
I got it. I got it. In fact, I used to work for IBM in my very early training days. We used to
Nice.
write COBOL. I could probably manage a line or two myself. But what worries me now, and it sort of alludes to what you were saying, there's probably some of my COBOL code that I wrote like 50 or more years ago in some organization here in London, because it's such high risk to change legacy code. But let me understand then. Does the Cosine platform sort of reverse engineer the legacy code, or how is it able to allow your customers to bolt on new stuff, which I assume they use the new style programming languages, while sort of interfacing correctly with the legacy code?
Yeah. So, It isn't a translation layer. What we do, so the way you should think about Cosine is that we are an AI lab. So very similarly to OpenAI and Anthropic, we train our own models. So we input data, and at training time, we make it very good at inherently understanding certain workflows, certain languages. And whilst we specifically concentrate on coding, and in particularly legacy coding languages, what it means is that the model that we ship to our customers alongside our products, so the two halves is we ship our own proprietary model, we also ship our own proprietary product that kind of cooperates together inside a customer environment. What that means is that the AI itself has been inherently in its core already understands coding, COBOL, business logic. And so what it does is that when you give it a task, it behaves like a human engineer, like problem solving, because it has the inherent knowledge inside its weights and somewhat brain already.
So if a customer comes to you and says, I want to, I've got this heap of legacy code, and I now want to add some new functionality, but I don't want to do it in the legacy code.
Mhm.
You bring in your model and your product. What's the difference between the model and the product?
Yeah, so the model itself is obviously the large language model that we've trained, right? So
Yeah.
think of that as what powers ChatGPT. The product itself is the user interface, right, and the internet connection to other data
Hmm.
sources. So think of it as the web interface, the CLI, the command line interface, the terminal, the kind of code editors that we bring. So it's what
Right.
exposes the model and allows people to interact with it.
So what sort of things is the product being used now? Because I understand you do have some customers actually using the product.
Yeah, so I think it depending on sector, right? So our main sectors are defense, critical infrastructure, and somewhat in financial services, particularly on the larger end, the older banks and the larger financial institutions. I think it kind of it stems probably in three large categories. Number one, it's maintaining services that are, as I said, like just simply have the lack of human talent, right?
Yeah.
So if you have legacy systems, legacy processes, legacy mainframes that you just want to make sure are running and humming along, and you want to maintain that, and that is at a massive scale. For example, huge swathes of avionics, both in civilian and military use, need to be maintained on a regular intervals, but you just don't have the people to do so. And all of a sudden, using our model and our product, you are able to maintain. One person can now 10x, 100x their efficiency. They can get to much more work.
So
Number
and
two.
when you say, sorry, just to clarify maintenance, because it's something I used to do hundreds of years ago, there's really two types. There's sort of correcting bugs, sort of preventive maintenance. Oh, sorry, there's
Mhm.
preventive maintenance, ahead of the time, correcting bugs, but also some people count adding new functionality, incremental functionality. You can do all of that with your platform?
Yeah, we can do so. Yeah, we've seen customers essentially give abstract commands and prompts such as, "Can you scan my code base and find all vulnerabilities and bugs, and then present a solution?" And the AI will go off for days, and it will come back with a very comprehensive report where it gives you lists every bug, ranks the vulnerability, the seriousness, the risk profile, and come up with a solution where it can. And then on the other end, it can give a backlog of features that has, we've seen some customers come to us and say, we have this long list of features that are perhaps not particularly economically viable, but in an ideal world, we still try. And previously, it wasn't financially worthwhile to assign a human engineer, but now assigning AI to do it means that it can assign, 30, 40, 50 tasks at the same time, but the marginal cost of building these new features is so low that they give it all in one go. So yeah, we can both fix bugs and ship new features.
So that in the case of adding new features, the programmer, if you want to call them that, would say, I want a feature that does this, and the AI would go in and basically code it at the appropriate level in the right place and make it so.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we provide, which a lot of our low risk tolerance or very regulated customers appreciate, is that we on purpose and intentionally train our models and build our product to be assured by design. So it will adhere to your design spec as closely as possible. It will give
Hmm.
you an extremely detailed audit trail that is a superhuman level, right? If you ask a human engineer, can you tell me exactly what decisions you made at every turn, what documents you read, and what line of the documentation you read that may inspired you to go down this route, the human would never remember, and nor would they bother writing that level of detail or audit report. We do. Our AI will tell you exactly what tools it used, why, when, to what detail, and why it made certain decisions along the route. And you know, and you can order that at any given time. And I think that for us, it's hugely advantageous for a lot of our regulated customers.
Yeah, and it's essential as well to have the audit trail, because if something doesn't quite go right, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly the point, that it didn't. No, it gives you a certain assurity and confidence that this thing is going to eventually behave the way you want it to behave. No, I get that. Now, part of the reason why I was so interested in speaking to you is because, when we chatted before, you mentioned that one of the industries that you were looking to use Cosine in was actually in semiconductor manufacturing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think it wasn't, we somehow landed in it a little bit to admit it. We got approached by, you know, essentially we got approached by two different companies. One was a chip consultancy company based in the US, and the other one was a fabless chip company in Taiwan. And they came to us with very similar requests to say, we have really struggled to find any model, whether it's Chinese or the big American players, that is very good at sysverilog, VHDL, a lot of these languages that a lot of these chip adjacent or even just chip manufacturing companies rely upon.
And these are low level languages for actually designing the design on the semiconductor, if I understand correctly, or something like that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And so the short answer is when they approached us, we said, we're not sure is the answer. My co-founder and I have never written a single line of VHDL, but we could kind of took it back to first principles to think, well, our ability to be state of the art in terms of coding benchmarks, right? These are third party coding benchmarks which verify that your AI is, at what level. We have stayed on competitive with the Americans and Chinese in 2024 and 25 and in 26. And in legacy coding languages, we are better than the Americans at these legacy coding languages. The reason that we can do so is that we've cracked the ability to generate data sets that are very out of distribution or very rare in the open world, right? So if you don't have enough data, if you don't have enough quantity and quality of these legacy coding languages or rare languages, you just can't train an AI model. We have cracked that, right? And by building our own kind of data pipeline and finding our own sourcing mechanisms and supply chain, if we could do the same for sysverilog and VHDL and set up the reinforcement learning environments, which is kind of think of it as sandboxes for the AI to kind of spar, right, to train at that time to become better and better at these certain tasks, then we could do the same for these languages as well. And so we attempted it, right? So we worked with these so chip industry insiders to say, what requirements do you actually need? What does it educate us first in terms of what your requirements? And we've essentially applied the same technique and methodology that we do for other legacy coding languages to kind of build a model that is now very good or just better than anything else on the market at these low-level languages that they are reliant on.
And those couple of organizations you spoke about, the consultancy and the fabulous manufacturer, are they actually using the product now in real life production situation?
No, they're not at the moment because we're working with them to basically how do we deploy them. So what they are
Ah,
very
okay.
concerned about is yes, the capability is there now, is that we're working with them to basically ensure that it is the product itself. Obviously, AI is very powerful, but they want control as well, is to basically to scope out what does deployment look like now that we've shown them that we can essentially, train a model that is very proficient at those languages that they care about.
I mean, do you see the semiconductor industry as being frankly, a viable sector for Cosine, or is it, just going to be a niche thing while you concentrate on defense and financial services?
Yeah, I think it's extremely viable. I think for us, it's like we see all of them as somewhat a homogenous market for us in that
Uh,
it's legacy and out of distribution coding languages for compared to the Americans.
Okay, they may have something to say about that, but hey, you're on the show. That's fine. Let me step back a bit and just talk through the funding that's kind of got you where you are today. Because initially, I guess it was like you and Ali, and I believe there was another co-founder briefly involved.
Yeah, Sam Stenner, like one of our best friends. Like Sam, Ali, and I have known Sam for a long time, over a
Yeah.
decade.
Oh, that's great. And when you kind of got together and launched Cosine, how did you fund it? You'd left your job.
Yeah, no. So we funded it out of our own pockets initially, right?
Okay,
we have been
bootstrapped.
lucky enough to gone through an exit, or a liquidity event before. Initially we funded ourselves, but we were also very quickly got into Y Combinator, which is the world's most successful accelerator for startups. And they immediately funded us with $500,000.
Well, that got you started, but you did subsequently raise funding. I think it was in 2024. You got a couple of $1 million in I don't know, it was a seed or pre-seed round.
Yeah, so we went through YC in 2023, and at the end of YC, which is a 3-month program, we raised $2.5 million, and we did it in a week. So we started raising on Monday. By Friday, we had closed $2.5 million. We were backed by Soma Capital, which is the US's most active AI fund, and in fact, if you go to PitchBook, I think they have been #1 in the AI space for 3 years in a row. So they're a fantastic investor. They really helped us in making introductions and advising us. And yeah, and that has really helped us significantly.
I mean, you make a big play, and rightly so. Thank goodness that being basically a British startup, and the sovereignty thing, which we'll come to in a second. But could you not generate any interest from British VCs? Was it all US investment?
Yeah, so we primarily raised from US investors. For us, we were optimizing for one thing, which was speed. So we knew that was a lot of work to get on with, and we wanted to optimize to say, we got introductions by YC to American investors. We were US
Right.
based. We wanted to optimize for speed, and speaking very candidly, this is nothing new. The due diligence process is a lot more streamlined in the US than it is in Europe as a whole.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that, by the way. So, point well taken. Now, the big news fairly recently, a few weeks ago, the government announced its much vaunted £500 million sovereign AI initiative, and Cosine was one of the very first startups to benefit from that. Can you just talk a little bit about how you got selected, how you got involved with this, and what you're getting from it, and what you're going to do with it?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So, it was a fairly like transparent application process, right? We had learned about this through our investors to say this is something interesting. And to be frank, at that point, we were not quite sure 100% what we were exactly getting out of it. As the process kind of went along, we kind of knew more and more, and it became even more enticing. But we had to outline what made us unique, what was our technology that was defensible, what we would use, whether it's capital or compute, what would we use this resource to achieve, right? So we had obviously larger and larger ambitions. So we wrote very candidly, and we wrote very precisely, and we wanted to apply for it. And it was a phenomenal experience. I worked directly with Josephine Kant, with Will Bushby at Solve AI, and they were phenomenal us working us through, and just asking further questions to get to know us better. And we
Yeah.
met them both in person too, so that they can know our company, the people behind it, and they did a fantastic and very thorough job in terms of vetting.
And what you were after actually was the compute access to the compute facility, rather than please send a check.
Yeah, so in the end, we got 3 things from Solve AI and essentially from the government. We got the compute, which is what we were primarily after. You are absolutely right. We now have, depending on how day by day how costly the GPU hours are, but up to £20 million worth of compute.
Wow.
And that's significant, allowing us to train an end-to-end sovereign LLM in UK soil on UK government-owned infrastructure. We have an investment kind of guarantee from the UK government as well, where they have a right of first refusal for our next round. They can invest up to 25 million in our next round, depending on how they want their ownership targets, right? Depending on the total size of our round. And then the last piece is that we also now can request access to government data. So obviously with a UK AI or any AI good data in means good model out or good AI out. So now we are in a unique position where we can request and work with the UK government to have access to UK data as well, amongst other, other things that we get from them.
But do they put any constraints on you then on I don't know who your customers could be, where else you should go for funding? What's the
No,
quid pro quo? No, really?
nope. So like we make a commitment, obviously, so far, we are UK founders, fully based in the UK. 100% of our employees are UK based. All our revenue is goes through the UK. Our IP is assigned to our UK company. We are fully British, and we intend to build in the British. Most of our customers are British. So yeah, our interests are aligned with the government, but there are no stipulations from them in terms of we must do something. I think this is a very much a founder friendly process. It's been
Right.
surprisingly founder friendly.
Well, that's really great. That's absolutely just the thing that startups need to be sure. So, where are you today with Cosine in terms of how far the development's got? Obviously, you say you've got paying customers, which is great. It can't just be you and Ali anymore. How big is your team?
Yeah, no, we're at 25 people in the company, all based in London. And it's been phenomenal that the more people that we add, the exponentially more work that can be done. And for us, we're on track. If things don't go terribly wrong for the rest of the year, we're on track to hit 10 million ARR by the end of the year. Where our significant traction is in the defense sector, but also now increasingly in advanced manufacturing of various different sorts because of the IP concerns or just more proprietary use cases where it's out of distribution compared to
So,
other
when you
AI
say
models.
advanced manufacturing, what sort of thing would be an example?
Yeah, so I would say like things like precise equipment such as avionics
Okay.
or like space manufacturing, like space related manufacturing, just very low tolerance faults, right? So anything that's very highly critical. Medical manufacturing is also one of those sectors that we're kind of making traction in as well.
I think that would be a really interesting one, and I'd certainly want to hear more about that at a later point. There's a number of startups that I've done podcasts with in the medtech area, and that's some of the most exciting stuff is happening there. What do you see as the next significant milestone for Cosine then, Yang?
I think for us is that we're very excited now we have access to the UK supercomputer Isambard down in Bristol, and this huge value of compute is to train the next state-of-the-art model, which we have begun already. Like we know we can train models that are as competitive as the Americans, but now to be able to do it end to end on UK infrastructure means that we can actually claim hand on heart we are fully sovereign end to end, right? Backed by the UK government with capital, with compute, and access to data. We are a UK-based team, UK IP that does not leave, and now also trusted by UK PLCs, right? Like our customers are many of our customers are the largest PLCs in the UK. And we are very proud to be British. And I think the next milestone is to train a fully end-to-end, state-of-the-art, AI LLM.
What sort of time frame would you hope to get there then?
Within the next 6 months to be ready. Like I think for us, it's like we are currently and again, to know, many thanks to again the UK government themselves for helping us coordinate this. But we are now in conversations and have MOU signed with many of the largest UK PLCs for them to tell us what exact capabilities and performance requirements do they need from a UK sovereign LLM. So if they could have a wish list of what they want the AI to be able to perform and what to do and how do they want assurance by design, what would that wish list look like? And we can take that into consideration. And so that will take us a little bit of time, but the training for us will most likely finish within the next 6 months.
And do you need additional funding for that?
Yeah, so I think we don't need initial funding because of the UK government's generosity in terms of the compute.
Right.
But what we do think is that we can improve the overall performance and also the implementation side of our business, right? So how do we actually implement our solutions if we raise more funding? So off the back of the Sovereign AI announcement and obviously our own existing investors, we do actually have a current funding round open or fundraising. In fact, Y Combinator themselves, who historically don't follow on in investments, has now decided to lead our current round, right? So Y Combinator only invest in the very first round and then they stop. But there is a clause where, for certain very good companies that they have seen high potential, they will make an exception, and we are one of the exceptions.
Okay, so Y Combinator are going to lead this next round for you. Did you not say though that UK government does have the option to invest? I think you said up to 25 million. I mean, are they going to be involved in this next round?
Yeah, so absolutely. So once we close the round, they will be involved in taking a look at the deal, and they will decide on the amount that they want to confirm. So yeah, they will definitely participate, but they want the rest of the round to be established. But we're very confident because Y Combinator themselves, we include Tom Blomfeld, Gary Tan, Michael Seibel as partners, these world famous founders who have given us the standard approval, and them leading the round and setting the valuation has given it the confidence that we will close the round.
Terrific. So tell me, Yang, what's the ultimate dream? I mean, if you're going to look ahead 3 years, 5 years time, what do you want Cosine to be when it eventually grows up, if you want to put it that way?
We want to be 10 times bigger than DeepMind. I think DeepMind is obviously our inspiration, and they are our heroes. The people Demis who started and still there at DeepMind are our heroes, but we would consider them as American, right? They're owned by Google. I do not see a scenario where DeepMind would train a model or launch a product that only benefits the UK ecosystem or, the public sector. We would like to be that. We think that we can be a phenomenal and huge company, but we can be even more ambitious than DeepMind.
I think that's fantastic. You want to be 10 times bigger than DeepMind. You've got to have ambition, haven't you? You got to have a dream. You got to have a dream. So, can you tell us, Yang, how did you get involved with Form One Partners, and what's it doing for you and for Cosine?
Yeah, so I got introduced to Form One through my chief revenue officer, who had encountered them at a networking event, and I knew very little about them. So we, very simply sent them an inquiry form saying, this is who we are. We heard great things about Form One. Can we talk? And actually, that's where we started. And so far, the relationship has been phenomenal, and they have helped us both in how we position, how do we, succinctly sell our USPs, and also deliver the information in the right format, in the right stance, but also equally just making some really core introductions in order to accelerate our business. It has been phenomenal.
And they've been able to make connections with potential clients?
They absolutely have. They have been absolutely so helpful. We had a few target dream customers, and I must say, like, every single one of our dream customers so far, we've managed to have a conversation with many, and a lot of them thanks to Form One.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Well, it sounds like you're still at the very early stages of a very exciting journey. I mean, founded in 2022, it's only 4 years on, and you're dreaming big, which is a great place to be. So we'll follow your career and Cosine's with much interest. So Yang Li, co-founder, CEO of Cosine, thank you ever so much for joining me on the BritChips podcast.
Thank you for having me.